Welcome one and all to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy and this is Scruffy Tales. Uh, Still a bit under the weather, but news just keep popping up, so I can't help myself. So we will in this video take a look at some news from Swedish newspapers detailing how Ukraine wants to buy Gripen fighter jets, despite what the F-16 coalition seems to think about it. Right, so representatives of the Swedish government and representatives of various Swedish companies had a meeting with Zelensky as Dagens industry reported on here. The day's industry, I guess you could translate that into. And well, Zelensky told the Swedish officials and the company representatives that Ukraine wants to purchase Gripen fighter jets using some of the 50 billion euros in foreign aid that Ukraine will receive. So essentially, Ukraine is telling the F-16 coalition to fuck off, and Ukraine is now planning on using cash to get the fighter jets they want. And of course, the F-16 coalition wanted Sweden to halt the potential deliveries of Gripen to Ukraine so that Ukraine can focus on one new Western aircraft system instead of having everything arriving at once. But it seems as if Ukraine, they still want Gripen. They haven't given up on it, and now they want to buy them instead. And I'll see if I can translate some of the news here written in Swedish. The Ukrainian president revealed that he was very pleased with the CV-90, the combat vehicle 90, and he also expresses wishes to get a hold of the Swedish fighter jet JAS-39 Gripen. And as it is reported, he's outright said, "We want to buy Gripen." And the Swedish government official on location had this to say about it all. I interpreted it as that he wants to use the EU aid package of 50 billion euros to buy these aircraft. Not all, the entire sum, 50 billion, but take some of those 50 billion in order to purchase Gripen fighter jets. And it is a bit interesting because we have a quote from the Ukrainian Chief of Aviation, General Serhiy Hulubtsov, who has said, "We are currently working on the F-16, building the infrastructure for it. In second place, we have the Gripen." And this is interesting. He continues to say, "And all requests to Sweden have also been granted. It's just that this process is not a priority now." So Ukraine has asked of Sweden to provide Gripen, training, ammunition, missiles, and all of that. And apparently Sweden agreed to more or less everything Ukraine wanted. It's just that the F-16 thing came in the way. The F-16 coalition said, no, wait with the Gripen. We want to get this done first and stuff like that. And now it seems as if Ukraine, they still want everything that Sweden has agreed to. They're just now ready to, spend money to make it happen. Yeah, no, just as I hit record. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, even more interesting is that back in August of 2023, Swedish newspapers reported that Saab, who produces the Gripen fighter jets, they have 14 finished hulls. They have 14 Gripen ready to be assembled, just as long as someone is willing to front the cash. So they have 14 aircraft just sitting around waiting to be put together if someone wants them. And these are the Charlie version of the Gripen. So that's an option. Ukraine could also be after existing airframes, hoping to buy older Gripen Charlie versions that are currently in service, and buying them as Sweden intends to replace these older Gripen with the more modern Gripen Echo that is currently being produced, and that will replace older Charlie versions in the future. And speaking of the Gripen E, the Gripen Echo, Brazil is acquiring Gripen Echoes, and they even have their own factory that will build 15 Gripen Echoes. So will Ukraine purchase this latest highly advanced state-of-the-art version of the Gripen? Maybe they will front the cash to get Gripen Echoes down the line. Maybe that's the plan. So they have a couple of options here, Ukraine, what they want to do with this money. Either purchase these 14 Gripen that are ready to be assembled, maybe purchase existing airframes from Sweden, or buy future Gripen Echo aircraft that will be produced in a couple of years. So we'll see what happens here. God damn it, sorry. Ukraine purchasing existing airframes from Sweden seems a bit unlikely because Sweden has already said no to that. Sweden needs its own air force intact to protect its own borders. So it looks like Ukraine has two options, realistic options: purchase the 14 that are ready to be assembled, or buy brand spanking new Gripen Echoes that will be built in a couple of years. So what can Gripen offer Ukraine? Well, I'm gonna use some very rudimentary graphics to try and highlight what 90% of you already know, exactly what Gripen can offer Ukraine. And first off, one major advantage of the Gripen is that it only requires a ground crew of 6, 1 trained skilled technician, and 5 conscripts that has been trained for a couple of months on the job they're doing. And they rely on a multi-tool, basically one multi-tool, to help out with everything they need to do in rearming, refueling, what have you, with the Gripen. And it's a mobile system. This small ground crew, these 5 or 6 guys, they drive around in 2 to 3 vehicles and link up with the Gripen on a suitable road, basically, where the Gripen can land, and then, you know, the team links up with the Gripen and gets shit done, basically. And famously, Gripen does not need to rely on spotless runways at an airfield. They can use a highway that has some, debris on it, and the Gripen can still land and take off. If compared to the F-16, that needs a 20 to 25 man ground crew team compared to the 5 or 6 of the Gripen, and they basically need purpose-built runways at an airfield. Yes, they can land on a road, but that road needs to be perfectly prepped so that there is no debris, because the F-16's air intake is situated right on the belly, so it will just suck up anything that is on the ground, and that will more than likely destroy the engine from within. So that is why the Gripen is so much more suitable for frontline combat situations than the F-16. The Gripen is, of course, purpose-built for this type of warfare, where Sweden expected an enemy, Russia, to bomb every air base, every airfield to back to the Stone Age, and then you had to rely on ordinary roads and these small teams of ground crews that would link up with Gripen as they would land out in a forest on a road, get things done, and then 10-15 minutes later the Gripen after landing would be back in the air fighting again. So that's the concept of the Gripen, and the F-16, simply put, can't compare or can't compete with the Gripen in this regard. So to illustrate my point here with this very hypothetical situation where you have a Gripen, he's on the ground here on a road and he takes off, flies down here because he's intercepting incoming Russian fighters. He launches air-to-air missiles. When that dogfight is over, he swings around, comes back up here, lands at another highway, another road, links up with another ground crew team, spends 20 minutes on the ground, takes off, flies down here, launches anti-ship missiles at some Russian warships, sinks a couple of them, swings around, lands over here, links up with another ground crew team, spends 20 minutes on the ground, takes off, flies up over here, tries to avoid enemy radar, swings in over enemy territory, drops glide bombs that hit various targets along the way, swings around, and then heads back to safety to to get out of the fight, do some repairs, and let the pilot rest. And so this is basically what the Gripen was designed to do. Take off, do some actions down here, land, quick turnaround, take off again, do something else, and rinse and repeat until you can safely get out of the danger zone. Danger zone. Which movie am I talking about? Huh? Leave a comment. And then, skedaddle out of the danger zone and get some rest. And while all of this is happening, of course, the ground crew, they're not stationary, because these locations will be bombed as soon as the Gripen has landed and taken off. So they move. So Russian missiles will hit nothing but empty roads, because the ground crew, they're already on the move, and they are now over here at another highway, at another road, waiting for another Gripen to come in to land, and they repeat the process with a second Gripen. So it's basically impossible to pin these down unless you spot them from the air, maybe with some special forces sneaking around, or using satellite images to be lucky about it, basically, as to spot them, that you can launch missiles long before they have helped a Gripen or whatever. So yeah, so basically this is the concept of the Gripen and the ground crew. And as you can imagine, this is highly effective compared to having large air bases or airfields that will be easy targets for Russian missiles. And take a look at these graphics, huh? I'm spending cash on this shit. Uh, so Gripen has another advantage, and it's its electronic warfare system, and it decoys and what have you, which fools enemy fighters, giving the enemy fighter multiple ghost targets to choose between. So the enemy pilot, he gets multiple blips on his radar, and he's uncertain which is the actual Gripen to engage. So while the Russian pilot in this case is wondering which of these targets am I supposed to fire at, the Gripen pilot can launch his own missile, get a lock on, and force the Russian to skedaddle and get out of dodge. And the Gripen has won the engagement. And we also, as we know, Sweden provided Ukraine with some early warning and control aircraft, two if I'm not mistaken, and since they're Swedish, they are very compatible with the Swedish Gripen. And what can they provide in a air-to-air combat situation? Well, Ukrainian pilots and Russian pilots, they want to fly low because, as you can see, if you fly low, obstacles like terrain features and what have you blocks radar. So ground radar and aircraft radar will not be able to spot the enemy. So you try and remain low to hide from the radar, and then get as close as possible to the target to eventually go up, drop some bombs or missiles, and then go back down into cover and leave the danger zone. Danger zone, once again, what movie? But if you have one of these high up in the air and they're looking down, they can spot the enemy behind all the terrain features, and they can then relay that information to your fighter pilots. That gives you obviously quite an advantage, since these guys are seeing the enemy, but the enemy, they're not seeing your fighters. So your fighters are now moving around, relying on the terrain to intercept an enemy that they are very well aware of. Meanwhile, the enemy has no clue where your friendly fighters are moving around or where they are located. So this combo here works. It works with F-16s also, obviously, but I mean, Saab aircraft. These are compatible, and you get the most out of each airframe when they're working together, hunting down Russian aircraft. So yeah, finish that one off with some excellent graphics. I'm so proud of myself. Uh, anyway, yeah, Gripen, it provides a lot of advantages to Ukraine that no other aircraft is capable of providing to the same extent, not by a long shot. So Ukraine, they really want it. They know they need it. And they understand that the Gripen is purpose built for the kind of war Ukraine is currently fighting. So F-16 coalition be damned, Ukraine is willing to front the cash to get hold of some of the best fighter jets in the world right now, the Gripen. So I'll hope I'll see you in the next one. I hope you found it interesting. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, give them hell.